How is Shapiro not full of shit here?
So, how do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay.
Okay.
Someone's excited. Okay.
Sex is biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society. It's
okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that...
Let me make sure that we're not getting anything correct. So gender dysphoria, okay, he's wrong on this. This is going to be painful to watch, isn't it? So transgenderism, or being the state of being a transgender, was never referred to as gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria specifically refers to the emotional distress you feel when there is a mismatch between your body and what you think you are in your mind. That is gender dysphoria. So if a man believes that he's a woman, but he's like, whatever, well, I have a dick, this sucks, whatever, right? You wouldn't call that gender dysphoria. It's when a person suffers severe emotional distress, when they're like, I can't live, I'm depressed, I have severe problems, I'm experiencing anxiety because what I see in the mirror is not what I feel I should be. That is gender dysphoria, okay? Being trans and the state of experiencing gender dysphoria are not one and the same. These are two different things. This is really, really basic. This is really basic stuff. I don't know why Shapiro would ever talk about trans issues if he doesn't know this incredibly basic concept. I don't know. Should I listen to all of this before starting to talking on this? Most people will make a distinction between gender and sex. Sex is probably a thing where, like, you have an XY pair of chromosomes or you have an XX. You have certain organs, such as a uterus, a vagina, a penis, that make you belong to a certain sex. These are things that there is biological truth to this, right? Necessarily, because it's how we come together, reproduce, genetic mutation, kids, evolution, all that great shit. Comes about as a result of sex in most creatures. There are some not asexual creatures. There are some hermaphroditic. I don't know. There are, for the most part, this is how it works, right? I know that one person's going to say, well, what about that one creature that can reproduce something? Okay. The idea of gender is a much more difficult thing to narrow down. And this is what most of the debate is about, is over the idea of gender and gender expression. I kind of tweeted about this earlier today. The thing about gender is that it's really hard to say, like, if I were to get here's the game that we could play, okay? Well, let's pretend that you and me are having a debate. I'm talking to you. Let's pretend that you and me are having a debate, okay? I say gender is pretty arbitrary. Our idea of gender is pretty arbitrary. And you go, well, that's ridiculous. It's not arbitrary at all. It's actually, we understand what gender is. And then I go, okay, well, can you get... So my argument is gender is more like on a kind of a continuum than like a hard line like male versus female. When we're talking about the experience of being like a particular gender, right? And then you go, no, that's absurd, actually. Men and women, there are hard lines, okay? And then I would say to you, okay, well, without talking about their sex organs, can you give me the difference between a man and a woman? Can you give me some set of features that you can ascribe to manliness, and then some set of features that you can ascribe to females or whatever, right? That are like exclusive features, okay? And then you would think for a minute, and you would go, okay, what are some of the fundamental... I'm going to crush him here. What are some of the fundamental differences between men? I know there are differences. Okay, well, here's one, Stephen. Skeletal structure and muscle density, okay? Men are larger than women. Men tend to be larger than women, and men are stronger than women. That's just a biological fact, okay? And then I would go, sure, that's true. In general, men tend to be stronger than women, have thicker bones, larger skeletal systems than women. That is very true. However, can you not find women that are stronger and larger than some men who are smaller and weaker? right? And of course you would go, oh, sure. Yeah, I guess that's true. And then I would say, okay, well then would you consider those men to be women? Or would you consider the weakest men to be women? Or would you consider the strongest women to be men? And then you would go, well, no, I guess not. So then I would ask again, okay, so then what is it that makes a man, or a woman a woman, right? So after that, right, we could go back and forth on things that we generally believe to be masculine versus feminine, but the issue we're going to run into is that for every trait you give me that is masculine, I can find a decent number of women that probably ascribe to it. Shaving your legs, that's a cultural thing. Being strong or fast, there are athletic women. Like there are things that a decent number of women will fall under, and there are things that a decent number of men will fall under, right? So at the end of the day, our exact definition of like what is the gender of man versus what is the gender of woman is a little bit arbitrary and kind of mushy. There is no like hard line you can draw between one or the other without going into like sex organs, you know? That's so that's kind of the problem. If you want to approach if you want autism abuse, I don't care. I don't know why you've linked me this thread like a million times. Random people are talking about me on Likes and Fails. I don't care. I don't know why. How many times have you messaged me about this thread? What do you want drama or what? I don't understand why you've put this in chat like 15 times. Yeah, anyway, so that's what we typically talk about when we're talking about gender and the difficulty in saying like what is a man versus what is a woman. So now some people in chat are saying this is stupid. You literally said ignoring their sex organs when their sex organs are the crux of their arguments. But are they? Do you feel comfortable? So maybe I'm appealing a little bit to emotion here, but we can explore this. We can explore why I know you're going to answer the way you are. Would you? Oh my God, I just put Mr. Blair. If I were to show you a video of somebody like this, would you feel comfortable going, oh, this is definitely a man.
This video.
When I go into the male restroom, I want to see this person in this restroom. If I'm in a male area, I want to see this person in the male area. Like I 100% agree and feel this way, right? When you look at these types of people, right? Do you really feel like the answer is, oh yeah, for sure? Well, no, because that's not really true. When you talk about what a man or a woman is, you're not really talking about sex organs at all, because we know women that have smaller breasts, right? So it's not immediately apparent that they've got huge knockers as soon as you see them. And you very, very, very rarely do you identify somebody as a certain gender based on their sex organ. In fact, I would say a fraction of a time, because when you meet somebody publicly, you don't know what type of sex organ they have, but you're oftentimes making a judgment of is it a man or a woman based on some other set of characteristics. And all I'm saying is that other set of characteristics is somewhat arbitrary, right? Maybe you point to rugged faces, facial hair, shaving legs, but these are all cultural things. Asian people don't have very much facial hair, right? If you go to South Korea, are all of the men there women to you? Not all women shave their legs. There's like a lot. It just gets like really blurry. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, I'm not trying to say that this is like right or wrong or that you need to feel, a certain way. I'm just saying these are things to think about. And they kind of, I think they make Ben's argument here seem like a little bit silly and how absolutely simplistic he's going to approach the topic, but we'll listen to him.
True. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
So, like, the problem with this is this whole argument is built off of this absurd notion that as a person, you need to figure out, like, what sex... Like, how does this matter at all to you? Somebody on Twitter posed this question earlier, like, so you think that you should be able to demand that somebody refers to you a certain way, when they meet you or whatever? Well, yeah, we do it all the time. If somebody comes up to me, like, let's say, for instance, you approach me publicly and you come up to me and you're like, hey, what's your name or whatever? Like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm John, how you doing? And then, like, later on, you find out that, like, my middle name is John and my first name is Luke. It's like, you're Luke, John. Would you come up to me later and be like, I'm not going to call you John. I'm going to call you Luke. Because I know your real name. I know who you really are, right? Well, I would say, no, fuck you. Like, I go by my middle name. Or maybe I go by another name that I don't even, that's not listed on my birth certificate at all, right? But for most of the time, you never think about this. You don't care about this. You don't know. Now, you can inductively reason that if a person tells me their name is Catherine, their name is probably Catherine on their birth certificate, but you don't actually know that. But it's not that you don't know that, it's also that you don't care. If somebody presents themselves to you as like, hello, I'm a woman and my name is Catherine, right? You might say they're like, okay, well, what's up, Catherine? And that's like what you call them, and then that's it. You don't really think like, show me your fucking birth certificate. Like, you don't go like hard into like the truth and digging out, like, because it's not really relevant to you. It doesn't matter. We refer to each other as a polite formality. It's a cultural thing. We address each other in names that we want to be addressed with. That's just how society works. This weird idea that you need to be like the divinator of truth or some shit. Like, are you actually, like, somebody comes up to you like, hey, I'm Julia. And you're like, oh, cool. What's up, Julia? And she's like, oh, nothing much. Like, oh, and I'm a woman or whatever. You're like, huh, are you? And then you bring out the fingers and you grab them by the pussy, like, let me check if you're actually a woman. Like, damn, like, yo, chill out. That's not how anything works. That's not how we do this, dude.
I'm not going to
show me your vagine.
Modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should like not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just like...
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written, though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts.
Not really, though, because Ben is using the word boy to mean like XY chromosome when not necessarily everybody agrees with it. But I mean, we can appeal to tautology here, I guess. Like, well, boy means what I think it means. Therefore, Boy Scouts, satisfies my argument. But I mean, I guess we can do that if we want, sure.
Because this is a very... Because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl.
For a lot of human history, black meant slave and white meant master race, For some of human history, Ben, you would be locked in a fucking concentration camp working to your death, which, judging by your physique, would happen pretty quickly. Right? I mean, like, what is the appeal to... I don't think that Ben is very smart. This is really irritating to me. He's a very good speaker and he's very quick on his feet, but he engages in fallacy so quickly. He will point to fallacy like instantly to win an argument, and it's not a valid argument. What does this appeal to tradition? Like this satisfies your argument, or like it justifies your position? Like, well, at one point in time we believed this, and at another point in time we believed this. It's like, dude, like, come on, this doesn't help your argument.
17 though, like, people are drinking more things like culture.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our...
Oh, then we got the good old slippery slope. Oh, so if you identify as a 4-year-old, does that mean that suddenly you're a 4-year-old? How many documented instances are there of people being born feeling like they're a fucking moose? This doesn't really happen, Ben. Now let's look at how many people experience gender dysphoria to such an extreme extent that they actually fucking kill themselves. This does happen, and it's well documented, and there's a decent amount of academic engagement with the subject. How much academic engagement is there with the idea of trans-speciesism? Like nothing, okay? This is a horrible false equivalency rolled into a slippery slope, like all in one. This is just a stupid argument. Like...
terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
So this is where I would challenge Ben. Like, really, Ben, without describing sex organs, can you list to me some of these completely different traits between man and a woman? Because the thing is that if we were to describe everybody like on a continuum, it would probably look... I can't draw bell curves at all. It would probably look something like this, right? So bad. I can't draw. It would probably look something like this, right? Where, there might be some things like, like if we go to the far end of like the fucking, you've got like 800, 900T, you've got like massive bulging fucking muscles and shit and tons of fucking facial hair and stuff. Like, okay, yeah, like this is a manly fucking man. And if we go to this end, maybe you have very small bodies, very large accentuated breasts or something. You're like, sure, like you can get here. But in terms of like similarities, like men and women have a ton of similarities, far more similarities than differences. We're all humans, right? And a lot of these ideas of like what is it to be a man in terms of gender and what is it to be a woman in terms of gender are going to exist on a continuum. There are women that have to peel mustache shit off their face. Every woman when she's past 25 has probably done something with their facial hair at some point or another, whether or not you as a guy realize it or not. Plenty of women do things like this. Tons of men, don't build, massive fucking muscular bodies. Like all of it exists on a continuum to some extent,
Say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're...
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. I won't ask you how old... I will ask you how old you are, okay? Because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So...
I'm 22, so I'm probably naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
This it doesn't prove his point. It doesn't prove his point. What? Because age is a passage of time. Time is something that we can very clearly point to as an exact concept, right? Something that exists for 10 years is much different than something that exists for 20 years. This doesn't mean that there's a difference between two things because we can talk about the existence of time as a concept. This is such a stupid point. Fuck.
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
it's not the same as gender. You can't just...
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender.
That's not... What? What do you mean? That's not true at all. Why would you say age is less important than gender? Wait, did he say that? Hold on, I have to listen again.
Why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
it's not the same as gender. You can't just...
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex.
So, it's what would you call this? A false dichotomy? So he's talking about changing gender in the way that you would change your age. But nobody's arguing that you can change your gender. What they're arguing is that your idea of your gender is something that always has been and doesn't necessarily line up with how society views gender. They're not saying that one day you wake... Maybe this is actually a reveal of what goes on in Ben's mind. Maybe Ben thinks that a trans person at some point just decides, I want to be a woman, so I'm going to change my gender. Maybe that's actually what Ben thinks. But that's not generally how, from what I've read and from what I've spoken to and from what I've seen said, trans people don't generally wake up and go like, oh, or never, I don't think, wake up and go, you know what? I actually want to change my gender now, right? You can't change your gender. You identify as something different because society's prescribed norms for a certain gender is something that you don't feel like you line up with, right? There's a difference between that versus like, well, I just want to be a different gender today, right?
You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize...
You can't legally...
No, and now he's got her defending a straw man. He did it. You're so sly. You're so crafty, Ben. Woo! You're so crafty. What a sly man. And now he's got her right where he wants her. Because now she's stuck defending this fucked up straw man. Because she's probably really fucking nervous right now, right? She's getting up to speak in front of people, so she's not really even equipped to do this. Not like in an intellectual sense, but like in a, does she have experience public speaking? Because I imagine she's really fucking nervous right now. And now Ben's got her. Ben got her right where he wants her. Now she's trying to defend the idea of trans ageism, which is indefensible, and she knows it's indefensible. And I bet she went back and watched this the next day and realized, God damn it, what was I thinking? I fucked up. How did I get? Yeah, and the audience is against her too. Yeah.
Change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change...
Isn't gender fluid when you change your gender? So, like, if I would have I don't really think about it that much because, honestly, I don't care about any of this shit. I don't strongly identify as, like, one gender or another. It just isn't something that I care about. But, like, if I were to think about it, like, hardcore, I would probably say that gender fluid is probably the best way to describe our approach to genders. That no person is, like, completely masculine and no person is completely feminine. That we all exist on some continuum. And so I think that's kind of what gender fluidity means. But that's kind of what I would argue in terms of like I have traits that some people would describe as feminine. I have traits that some people would describe as masculine.
Sorry,
and I think every person is kind of like that. But yeah, so I don't know. That's just. But I don't know. I really don't think about these topics too much. But
your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize...
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously. You can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally...
And now she is fucking up because now she's conflated changing your sex on a birth certificate with making the decision to change your gender, which is not the original point that she would have ever defended. Destiny, when I donate via DestinyGG/donate, it doesn't work ever. Donation via the DestinyGG Amazon reset button. Oh, I don't know why it doesn't work. I'm sorry. Not a care. I love you, buddy. And thank you, Best Firm or whatever your name is. I love you too, buddy.
Doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. It could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization... Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. It could do lots of things in the past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Do you love me?
Right. I still don't understand how...
Of the
sure. Wow, he named Supreme Court cases. What is this? Hold on, what does this have to do with this argument? Sorry.
Logically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Oh, because he strawmanned her into defending the idea that you can change your birth certificate, that it makes it that it makes it okay. This isn't her argument at all. That she's arguing that just because you can change something on a birth certificate makes it okay. But I'm skipping donations right now. I'll read them at the end. Sorry. That just because you can change it on a birth certificate makes it like morally okay. That was never her original position, but he's like pushed her into this position that she can't possibly defend now, and I don't think she'll realize it.
Right. I still don't understand why these children that are.
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit, but that's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim membership. That's nonsense.
That's a straw man. That's just one part of the transgender movement. The idea of gender dysphoria, that's not something that can be... gender dysphoria, I think, is something that you experience within, not from society. Let's read. Oh, okay, never mind. I guess in part it goes into this. Some authors have suggested people with gender identity dysphoria suffer because they are stigmatized and victimized, and that if society had less strict gender divisions, transsexual people would suffer less. I guess it's all kind of like inexorably tied together. This is part of the conversation I had with Contra, is the idea is that people that experience gender dysphoria generally do so because there's a massive mismatch between what they see themselves as and what they are. But I guess if you existed in a society where people saw things differently, maybe you wouldn't see things that way, I guess, so... a twin study suggests JD may be 62% heritable, indicating the possibility of a genetic influence or prenatal development as its origin in these cases. Good source, Wikipedia and YouTube. Thanks. If you have anything better, feel free to email it to me. Until then, cut yourself, you fucking piece of shit. Cut yourself out of my chat, I meant. 1 year, still no visa return. I'm sorry, 12-month buddy, I love you. Why are you so threatened by bull-collar workers, sir? I don't know, that sounded retarded. Who identify as male, will you sexually abuse a child? Nice meme.
The transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And according to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not, which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats you.
Do you think it could be because of their bullied at school?
Which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between no difference. And according to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference.
I'm being really picky here.
More transgender. The idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%. The idea that 36% more transgender...
I don't like saying 36% more. He could have made it more dramatic. I think what he should actually be saying here is 1,000% more, or it's like there's a confusion here between relative and absolute risk. I think if it's 4% for one thing and it's 40% for another, you would say that there's a it's either a 900% increase or a 1,000% increase. This is really nitpicky, but he's a fucking cum laude of fucking Harvard. It's kind of a really he misspeaks pretty here. It's clear what he meant, yeah, but it's okay.
People are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite. It is pure. Wait,
hold on. What?
Because people are mean to them is ridiculous. It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite.
Is that true? I'm sorry. Earlier about the relative versus absolute risk thing, the reason why I said it's not nice to say 36% is because you're actually underselling your point there. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you've got a 1% chance of dying of cancer or something, and then something happens, and there's a new risk factor that can increase your chance of contracting cancer, or developing cancer, I should say, to 10%. You would never say that, like, oh, from that 1% to 10%. If you expose yourself to that thing, you've got a 9% chance increase of developing cancer. That's absolutely wrong. You have a 900% chance increase. It's the difference between relative versus absolute risk, and it's very, very, very important, right? That from going from 1% to 10, this is actually really important if you guys are playing games, if you're min-maxing a character in an RPG, if you're playing D&D or something like that, right? That let's say if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Let's say that you've got a monster that attacks you and it rolls a d20 or whatever, right? Let's say that you've got 18 armor, okay? If you have 18 AC and you move up from 18 to 19, you're not increasing your AC by 4% or whatever the number would be. You're actually increasing it effectively by 50%, because if they have to roll a 19 or a 20 to hit you, or let's say you've got 19 AC or whatever, right? If they've got to roll a 19 or a 20 to hit you, increasing your armor by 1 point gets rid of half of the possible rolls that they can use to attack you with. So you're actually effectively saving yourself from 50% of the damage. Does that make sense? Moving from 19 to 20 AC wouldn't just be like, oh, like that's a 1 point. Whereas if you move from 0 AC or 1 AC to 2 would be a lot different than the moving from 19 to 20, where 19 to 20 would decrease the amount of hits on you by 50%, assuming that they're always rolling D20s, and moving from 1 to 2 would decrease it by, from 20 hits to 19, that would be a 2.5% decrease or whatever, right? I'm sorry, yeah.